Hey, welcome back to the Net Podcast in 2022. Happy New Year, everybody. We're here for a new thing we're going to try called a 5-minute jam session. So we're going to talk about whatever's on the top of our mind, completely unscripted, unrehearsed. Maybe another show will come out of this, but we're going to try to just see where we get to every week with a little thing like this. So guys, this week's topic is kind of what's going on in open source. We had Log4j a couple weeks ago. We have the color NPM issue that's going on. What are you guys thinking?
Well, I feel like there's a couple of things going on with this, right? There's, first of all, I mean, for someone who doesn't know what's going on with the colors issue, which is the latest one, looks like an open source maintainer kind of pushed a bunch of malicious code, right, to introduce an infinite loop in these JavaScript packages that were collectively downloaded roughly 30 to 40 million times a week by, projects across the web. So it kind of caused a bit of a problem. It was an issue, right? And so the initial concern was, wait a sec, what is this person doing? Why are they doing this? And that's something we can dive into. So why would someone maliciously do this?
One of the issues he brought up, which is legitimate. I mean, we're all open source developers and all that. His complaint was about getting paid. He says, there are huge systems making billions of dollars a year, and he cited like AWS and a few others, like their whole control system. They're making a lot of money. He doesn't get a dime out of that. This is kind of like the music royalty thing, Dave, we were talking about, like, does he deserve a piece? I mean, he is working on it. He's the only maintainer, right? Well, there's two maintainers, I think.
Either way, right? It's that fundamental inequality in open source, right? You may do something out of just out of fun. Like, I don't know, I'm going to write a library that colorizes text on the command line or whatever, something pretty low level. And then suddenly Amazon bundles that in their SDK and everybody else does, and the whole thing blows up, right? And then it's all on you. Like those companies that are more than happy to squeeze you and say, oh man, I could really use these features and other things, but they have developers on payroll, a lot of them, that could potentially contribute here, and you don't get a dime. And that in some ways feels quite wrong, especially with this heavily capitalist society that we live in. Like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Like,
and then Kyle's point, for the users, right? I mean, the users are kind of held hostage, right? It's kind of a ticking time bomb in your code, right? When this event happens, what do you do? I mean, you have shipping product or live product, not even shipping product, right? I mean, you're wedged, right?
Well, and the other angle to this is, obviously it's bad what we're talking about the developer did and the users, but on the other side is the users of the software, people who are pulling this package in. It kind of exposes perhaps some bad operational practices of all of these people as well that are just,
Massively.
Hey, number one, I don't pin versions of anything, so I'm just grabbing the latest, which will change at any given time. Number two, I don't have a backup copy of the software I'm pulling from the internet in my production system. And number three,
do you know what's in there?
I don't even know what's in there. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that this is exposed from an operational perspective, and there's almost like this implicit trust in open source. Well, I just pulled it from the internet, it's going to work.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a thing that's been brewing for like 20 years. I mean, since I started teaching graduate classes, I'll tell you, I mean, this is the thing that really pisses me off, where students have instead of writing the module that they need to, they've gone and just pulled the thing in, and then, which is kind of okay. I mean, it's part of how we do software engineering today. But when I'd say, well, do you understand the pros and cons of that package versus another one? And have you looked inside the package? Is it like the code acceptable or anything? like, no, that's, never done. That really bothers me, because it's just like building building a house on a potential sandy foundation or something. Just doesn't seem right.
On the flip side, though, like, there's a whole lot of stuff which just makes no sense to re-implement each time, and it's just that is the original promise of open source, right?
That's the
Why
tension
should we
between this,
all
right?
why should
Yeah.
we all go and do it our own way when we could collaborate and share the load? And I think that works so long as we all do share the load. And unfortunately, that's what's not
Well,
happening.
share the load, but share the benefits perhaps too.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the other part that might be
Yeah.
missing. But I think this also highlights. So this was an obvious. I mean, the developer here maliciously pushed this, and it was an obvious hang, and it was very visible across the internet. But it should also cause people to say, "Wait a sec, what else am I loading where there isn't an obvious thing?" And do we know what's even going on? So I pulled on the
Well, there
latest
were
version of the package.
vulnerabilities also a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago. There were some folks from one of the some I don't remember exactly who it was, but they had checked in literally some malicious code, and even the maintainers didn't see that. They just let it go in. Um,
And
and
I
there's that.
think we're
It's kind of just to
Yeah.
finish Dave's thing. Dave is a great point, but one thing maybe that needs to be added is shared understanding of what's in there. That's the thing that's missing. Sorry, go ahead, Brent.
Oh no, I think we're glossing over the how amazing the colors exploit or injection of bad code is. Like I think there's like a mental illness story here too that we're not touching on. Like dude put in, where it's like an American flag over and over and over. So it's like I don't know. It's like it
Yeah.
resonates like this kind of crazy QAnon like thing, or it's like some kind of bizarre meme thing where the guy's just like setting his
Look, it could be anything.
reputation on fire.
Yeah.
So,
But it could
yeah,
be anything. It's
yeah.
not the thing you think it is, which is,
Well,
you
yeah,
know.
and
Well, but
but I
but
think
pulling on
like
Brent's idea, did you go and look at the issue he opened to fix it with I mean, if you haven't, you really should. It feeds into what you're saying, Brent.
yeah, it's pretty fascinating. But I think so. Automation is definitely like the only way we're gonna like solve this. Like it's not like eyes on. So actually, there's an interesting. I'm gonna simp for Chris Wright here, CTO of Red Hat, because I'll always do that. I love the dude. He's a genius. But he's got an interesting blog post around this, like open source software and supply chain security. So there's some like steps there that are being laid out. Obviously, it's kind of that's a Red Hat approach for it. Disclaimer: Dave and I do work for Red Hat, but there's some interesting stuff there. SigStore's got some pieces around it. There's some AI pieces.
Yeah.
So there are some good initiatives out there to start trying to address the supply chain. That's worth taking a look at if folks are
Test
interested.
and verify and understand. That's like
Right.
kind of it seems obvious, but it's just not being done.
There's a
Right.
whole
You know.
bunch of companies out there right now that will quite happily sell you software that will take a look at all of your dependencies and give you that list of like, here they all are, right? And this is where they get pulled in by.
Yep.
These are the dependencies of dependencies. These are the licenses of all of the dependencies. So you can make sure that you do right by those. And
Mhm.
that solves the understanding problem, but it doesn't necessarily solve the value problem. And you need to understand what each of those things is doing for you. And if it is critical, then maybe think about giving that developer some money.
Well,
Like
in fact, those
even
tools should be illuminating the value of the thing right there,
right.
right?
If it's
Wow, look at
important to
all
you,
these
either put some
10,000
resources
people
towards
building my
fixing it.
product,
Yeah,
but I'm not
put
giving them any money.
right. Put some resources to it. If you've got an engineer and you're like, hey, they could help out here, then let them help out. And if you can't
Yeah.
help out with resources, then help out with finance, because each of these projects is in a similar type of thing. Like coming back to Log4j, there's a couple of developers that spent the Christmas period working unpaid with a whole bunch of then security analysts that are like,
Fixing
oh,
that.
look, here's a new library. There's some stuff that we can go look at. Let's file some more CVEs and make some more work for these guys. And who's
Yeah.
who's paying them? Like
Who's paying
when do
them?
they get their holiday back? Like they don't,
Yeah.
and that's this fundamental inequality which I think we need to try and do something about as a community. Like,
Yeah.
Well, the crazy thing is you don't even. So I mean, we've all got libraries probably that lots of people use, and we don't even know about it. I mean, I know I've got an image up, a container image up that's got like, 10 million plus pulls. And like one day I just looked at it and it's like at 10 million. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I should probably update this if this
Yeah.
many people are pulling this, right? So, yeah, I don't know. Dave, you just kind of encapsulated Web 3.0, right? Decentralization. And here's how
Yeah.
everybody monetizes the grift. So,
Oh no,
but
don't
there
get
is
me
some,
Jump in
started on
that
there is,
that.
pool later.
Is
That's
this
a whole
this is
other.
That'll be another
foreshadowing of
podcast.
future episodes?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
But there is some, like people working for free for giant companies. There are some problems with
Well, there's
that.
the flip side too, which is like, I mean, there's this pretty assumption a lot of us make that companies have developers and they can work on things and contribute. I mean, there's a million enterprises out there that this is like so far from reality that, is not going to happen. So what do they do? I mean, for them, it's kind of what do they use the tools Dave was referring to and then go, wait a minute, I'm buying this stuff, or do you depend on the vendor to do this, or what? I mean, this is not a solved thing, and maybe that's why it's good we're riffing on this today because we don't seem to have a super solution to this either. But it's worth continuing the conversation about for sure. 'Cause this has got to be solved, or we're going to keep running into these things over and over again. But I don't know. This might be a good place to cut it for today because we were going to do just 5 minutes, but we clearly could spend an hour talking about this in the future, and I think we will.
Sweet. So if you in the audience have interesting ideas about how we could maybe solve the problem once and for all, then feel free to drop us a message on Twitter or via email, and we'll look at maybe doing a more in-depth podcast in the future.
And we'll bring you on.
Yeah.
And we might bring you on. Yep. Thanks.